And we're live. Nick Robinson, I haven't seen you for ages, apart from
it's been
2 days. Apart from 2 days ago.
Yeah, but before that, it must have been 10 years or more. Good to see
Probably
you.
more
Good
than
to be
10
here.
years. Probably more than 10 years, because I was trying to figure out when I met you. So, backstory, Nick and I have known each other for about 14 years, something like that. And I got a text from him, 3 days ago, saying, can you come for a coffee? And we did. He came to my village and we hung out and caught up, and it was very good to see you, mate. Good to see you doing so well.
It's good to be back in the mountains and visiting the place that you call home.
Yeah, well, where are you based?
So I'm based in Edinburgh, up in Scotland, and that's been home now for 5 years. Prior to that, we were living in Morzine in the French Alps. So that being said, I spend a lot of my time traveling. Actually, I travel to London quite a bit. The company that I run has an office down there. I did have an office down there, and also the Lake District, which is where I'm calling from today. And then I spend quite a lot of time also out.
So let's talk about your history. So because you started you're the CEO and co-founder of Maison Sport, which you're going to talk about. But if I can break it down simply, it's basically almost like an Uber for ski instructors and ski professionals to help. If you want to rent a guide or a ski instructor for the day, but it goes across the whole of Europe.
No, exactly. Consensus point. I wouldn't go with Uber. Let's go with more like an Airbnb.
Okay, Airbnb.
Purely for the fact that we, I guess Uber typically has replaced a lot of drivers, like local drivers, with drivers from out of town. So for us, we work with local instructors and we try to, I guess, improve their lives and the experience that they have working on the mountains.
Yeah. And that's been going for 4 years. But we're going to talk a lot about that today. But we'll go back a little bit. I met you when you were 19, so 14 years ago. And we were working in finance. You used to be you were a racer, a ski racer, British juniors team, and tragically cut short. Was it? But I remember you had a bad knee.
I wouldn't say tragically. We kind of like a multitude of things. I think at that point, for me, I was the best ranked junior slalom skier in Britain, but unfortunately, around sort of 2009, 2010, the governing body went bankrupt. Ski racing is an expensive sport, especially if you're British. You're having to travel a lot, be abroad. And so, I did one more winter, which was like fully self-funded. So that involved working, making the money that I required to go and do my season and to go and train and race. But I also broke my leg kind of around that period of time. And then I also met Alana, and we ended up having a baby when I was 19 years old. So kind of a lot of things in a short space of time required me to have a change of.
Yeah. I mean, 19, like I just said to you, my mum had 2 kids by 19, or pretty much 2 kids at 19. But nowadays, it's very rare. You don't see it. In fact, whenever you see a young mum, I automatically assume it's a babysitter or a nanny or something. So when I met you, you just had or was just about to have a baby, and you were 19 supporting a family of 3. Just pretty impressive. When you think about it, must have been a fun time.
No, I mean, probably I wouldn't describe the initial time as fun. It became a lot more fun. No, certainly at that point. Unless you're well set up in life, which I definitely wasn't. I didn't have an income. We weren't in, we hadn't been in a long-term relationship, let's say. So it was definitely a tough time for me initially, actually, just to kind of took that responsibility on in full force, and wanted to make sure that, I could provide as best as I could for the family.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, a lot of, how I felt during that period of time became my fuel for business and fuel to kind of go on and succeed, I guess.
And thanks to our mutual friend, Jamie Bell, shout out to Jamie, who I'm going to see this weekend, actually. He saw some potential in you and he got you on board to come and work in finance where he was working. And he also did the same for me. And so we spent a couple of years in the same office. That was some interesting times.
a note on Jamie would be, yeah, I guess, for me at that point, not, I wouldn't say lost, but like, trying to find my next direction. I'd managed to qualify as a ski instructor through my racing years. So my intention was just to go and begin ski teaching. And Jamie ultimately, yeah, he thought I'd make a good broker. So he kind of pulled me in and gave me a massive leg up in life, actually. So I'll forever be eternally grateful for what he did at that point in my life.
Did you enjoy it?
I did for a period of time. I enjoyed it for probably a couple of years. I ended up doing close to 4 years. And I think for the first two, I kind of gave it everything and enjoyed certain aspects of it. There was quite a lot of drama involved. I moved from one company to another and, set up the business that I was doing before. And yeah, there was a lot of drama and a lot of fun at times. And then I think when I realized though that it probably wasn't for me long term, it then became a lot less fun and it became a bit of a mission to get out, I guess, and work out where I go from there.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I enjoyed the experience, but it's quite it's long hours. People assume that if you're working in finance that the money just rolls in and you don't have to do very much. But no, it's 10-hour days, sat at a desk, 8 till 6, and you can't really even leave the office. You got to be there. You're there waiting for a phone call any second, and it wasn't for me. I stuck it out for a while though, but I left. And guess what I did? I left and I ended up, well, no, that's not. Before that, I had a ski school. So I founded a ski school with some friends here in Verbier.
So and
you left. Yeah, you did it in reverse. You left and not founded a ski school. You took over a ski school.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like I think the broken for me, it was probably the cultural aspect that I found most challenging. I mean, I gather most people have probably seen the Wolf of Wall Street movie and the opening scene where the amount of abuse that's flying off the room at each other. Genuinely, money broken is very much like that. In certain offices anyway, so I hear. I think ours was one of the more vibrant, let's say.
I worked on oil rigs. I was in the army. I grew up in Scotland. I'm used to abuse. It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother you after a while.
Yeah.
You've heard it all. Sometimes you get surprised and somebody insults you in a new and interesting way, but apart from that, nah. But it was, I get, like you say, it was enjoyable. It's kind of fast paced, adrenaline filled, and you can make good money. I wasn't very good at it, and I didn't enjoy it the same way you did. So, but what it did do for me was it gave me a good what I think most people don't have. In fact, 99% of people don't have is the understanding of how world finance actually works. So once you're in there and you actually realize what's going on, you think, okay. And I think it does stand you in good stead for the future after that. And I didn't realize that you'd done 4 years. I thought you'd only done probably about the same as me, or a little bit longer, but
no, I did more. And then I did my exams as well. So I qualified. So I'm officially a financial advisor, albeit I wouldn't take a financial advice from myself. And then I was actually thinking of going on and pursuing it. So like for a while I did contemplate, just leaving that office and leaving Switzerland, which is where we work, and moving to, I ended up with a job offer to go to New Jersey, be an oil broker, or in London. So I went through a long interview process, was offered a job, and then decided kind of at that point, you know what, that isn't what I was looking for. What I was looking for was to, follow my passion, which was ultimately in the mountains.
Yeah, oil brokers make a lot of money. I know quite a few of them. I've got quite a lot of friends who are oil brokers, and it's obscene. Well, it's not obscene. That's what they get paid. I guess you got to get there to make the money, but you've got to do what you got to do. But yeah, I understand. So funnily enough, the last podcast I did, so this is what are we on Thursday? I published it yesterday, Wednesday, so 28th of August. It was with a woman, Ariane de Bonvoisin, her name is, and she, very fascinating lady. So she, did the traditional route. She was told, you work hard at school, become an athlete, become very good at a sport, be very good at school, work hard, go to university, get good grades. You're going to get a great job and you're going to make loads of money. and your life is going to be fun and happiness will follow. So she did all that. She was elite level swimmer, took part in the Commonwealth Games, the Asian Games, went to top universities, went to Stanford for her master's, got top of the class, worked for a major consultancy company, a very well-known one, and then ended up running a VC fund, a venture capital fund of $500 million. And this is back, this is 20 odd years ago. And when she was 28. And she jacked it all in, Nick. She quit everything. She actually had the dream fiance, everything. It's really fascinating to talk to her. But she said, I had all this stuff. I'd done everything that people told me to do, better than almost anyone else. But I was deeply unhappy. And, I feel I understand 100% when you say that, I want to follow my passion. And I like when people do that, because when it's your passion, you don't mind spending time at it, right? And something you feel passionate about, it doesn't really feel like work. And also, if you've started a business, it's up to you to make it succeed, right? Especially when you're the CEO and a co-founder. And so you had your ski school business, and was that in Courchevel?
Yeah, it's Courchevel based.
In France.
I think for me through that process was it was exactly that advice actually, and it wasn't personal advice that was given. It was through I went through a period of time where I'd commute between Edinburgh and Geneva towards the end of my broken career, and I was reading on Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, and it's kind of that same point. I just remember this paragraph where he was talking about being pissed off going to sleep at night because it meant that couldn't do what he was doing when he was awake. And I was experiencing the reverse of that, where I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, I don't even want to get out of bed. Like, the thought of going into the office right now is still in me. And I mean, I'm sure there's many people out there that have that same feeling. But for me, I couldn't accept that that's how my life was going to be for the next 50 years. So, his whole mantra was follow your passion and the money will follow. At the time, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, because I think for the most part, being a ski instructor is probably, a lifestyle job rather than you don't go into it necessarily to become rich or wealthy. But yeah, I just figured that I'll take that advice and I'll go, and life will become happier and better.
Yeah, but you say you don't. Well, I'll use the example of it being a ski instructor. Everyone thinks it's a very glamorous thing to do, and where we've been working, in the resorts we've been working, it is, from the outsider's point of view, it is a glamorous thing to do. But it's not like you've got the clients living in these huge, insane chalets. They're spending hundreds of thousands on a week for their holiday, hundreds of thousands, sometimes more. I hear anyway. I'll not go into that. But right, we are as in we, all of us, people who are in that job, they're not living in these people. You just assume that you got this plush pad and you're being looked after by some rich widow or something like that. It's not the truth. You're just living in a regular flat like everyone else.
Exactly.
It's like that. Though,
it's a service job. You go up and you, particularly in Courchevel or Verbier or the higher end of resorts. Yeah, you are. You're serving these uber wealthy people that they want to have a good experience, and that doesn't mean necessarily you're obviously living the same life as them. It very much is a case of you're part of that world, but you're doing a job, and thankfully it's, for most of these people, it's their passion.
And when did you realize that? Oh, no, carry
on. You were just saying that, so for me, when I left, for us, we kind of looking from the outside in, why it wasn't just a case of following my passion and going, I want to ski. I also saw that, I think at the time, probably 10 years ago, you couldn't book a ski lesson online anywhere in the world. I'm fairly comfortable making that statement, but I think that was probably the truth at the time from what I remember. It was crazy. You had Airbnb that was already booming, and you had all these internet companies going crazy, but, online, there was not much. Like, you'd have to fill out a contact form, or you'd have to send an email, or, call up the school, that type of thing, or turn up at the shop. And for us, I was like, right, there's a lot of antiquation going on here, so we can go in, set up a ski school, build a really nice website, and kind of go from there. And then I was, at home in my living room in Edinburgh. It was at a time when we were kind of living between Geneva and Edinburgh. And my girlfriend's aunt was the person, Sue Dixon, who's the mother of Alan Maxtow, who's a famous British ski racer who won a bronze medal at the Salt Lake Olympics. She was the owner of Supreme Ski School, which had been around since 1991. It was one of the first international ski schools across the Alps. And she was looking to sell out. So it kind of came to me, and that business was exactly the type of business that I guess we felt like we could go in and turn around. The website was very old and dated, and the company did a bit of a rebrand, but you had a really core team of great ski instructors. They were slightly older at that point. So we knew that ultimately we would have to bring in a load of youth because they would retire within the next 3 or 4 years, most likely. But yeah, it gave us a really good start, I guess. We had a big legacy of clients going back close to 30 years.
So when you started, when you took over Supreme Skied, how many locations did you have in the Alps at the time?
So it was myself, my brother Ollie, and Aaron. We came together. Ollie, we all ski raced together. Obviously, I'd known Ollie since birth, being my older brother, and we were very close. My final season ski racing, where we came together, me and Aaron, to, I guess, work as a duo on the back of the governing body going bankrupt. So he was also a British ski team racer. And then Ollie, kind of last minute, was meant to be doing a quantity surveying course in college back in the UK. Turned around and said, "Hey, can I come and help you two out and coach you?" So we paid him a very nominal amount of money to ferry us in his car around the mountains and set courses for us, and plan and schedule and go to race meetings. But yeah, that was kind of the three of us worked together that winter with me and Aaron ski racing and Ollie as our coach. It was an absolute failure. So we had our first failure together as a trio. I retired at the end of it. Ollie didn't ever coach again. And Aaron actually, to be fair, persevered and went off and did another season. But, I think ultimately we had a really good time and we enjoyed it. And so when the ski school opportunity came up, we ended up going in 3 ways on it and doing it together. But yeah, what we bought was a school with just 6 instructors that were working probably half of the expected hours during the winter that you would hope as a ski instructor. So it was very small. And, that was down from a peak of, they probably had a team of 30, 35 back in the early 2000s. So yeah, it was very small and it was just operated out of Courchevel. And so from there, like I said, we built a website, we rebranded it, and we've hired a few more ski instructors, signed some good tour operator contracts, and grew it from there. And yeah, it's a lot bigger.
So how many instructors do you have in Courchevel now for your ski school there?
In Courchevel, it's not. We probably reach about 25 in a peak week. But the concept of the school was to have relatively small teams, but across all of the major resorts in Europe. So the idea was that you have team sizes of 10 to 20 instructors, but in as many locations. So we're now in 28 locations.
28.
Yep, 28. And the story here though is more complicated than that, because after the first season we had the idea or the concept of what is now Maison Sport. The idea being that in France at that time, particularly France anyway, there was a large number of independent instructors that were self-employed. They ran their own businesses, but they were struggling because of the internet revolution. So like I said, we developed our website, which kind of set off a chain reaction in Courchevel anyway, and everyone starts to invest in their websites, and all the independent instructors move further and further pecking order. Websites became, in some cases, they're expensive to run. So our concept was, let's create a platform that an independent instructor can remain independent. They can set their own pricing, their own availability. Customers can go on and choose them, so it's none of that, just turning up and not knowing who you're going to get. You can go on and look at the profile of the instructor, look at their previous reviews, book the instructor direct, and then the platform just takes a commission. So I think we came up with this idea within 12 months of buying Supreme. And the reason why we kind of felt compelled to do it was, and there was another company called Guidebase, which had been set up specifically for mountain guides. And we felt that the jump to ski instruction wasn't far. And ultimately we felt that it was probably a better opportunity than the guiding opportunity. So we knew that someone was going to do it at some point. And so we figured that, if someone's going to do it, then we need to be the people to do it. But we were 23 years old. We'd just bought a business. And then we had to set up a competing business, which was a technology company, but none of us were developers. We kind of sat around and we convinced each other for probably 6 months that this wasn't something we should do. And it was a terrible idea until we decided that actually, we have to find a way to make this happen. Otherwise, the existing business is going to be a
Yeah, and that's an interesting one because I've only done it once, setting up a company, but it's really exciting and really fun, and you're not getting paid anything. So any money that comes in, if I remember correctly, the first, the first booking, the first money you're coming in, that's coming in for you, it's like a lot. It felt like a lottery win. You know what I mean? You feel like, I can't believe that people are actually using this. We had a good website. One of the guys was he would a copywriter, so, and he knew how to the basics of building a website. So that was, and the other guy was an IT guy, so he knew how to set up all the stuff. And it was a really fun time. And of course, when you start to get successful, it becomes, you have to sort of, you can't really believe it at first, can you? That people are actually going to use it, and how did you guys get on in your first year?
Yeah, so for us, we needed to build a platform. So, from a PowerPoint presentation, we had to go and find an investor. We wanted to raise £150,000 to, start everything up. And we managed to get a check for 100 grand, along with, we had to get, I think the conditions of that initial investment were family member each invested, and we had to have a friend invested, and that they felt that would give them enough security and ensure that we worked in a way that was respectful, and we'd do everything we could to kind of make the thing succeed. So we spent the best part of 7 months building the website with an agency based in the UK. We launched. You speak about that first moment of the first booking. So at the time, the platform was like a request to book booking process. So much like Airbnb, or much like Airbnb was and still is sometimes, you went on and you made a request. The request went to the instructor, and the instructor would accept or decline. So, champagne gets popped because we get our first customer coming on and making a booking, like a massive moment. You've already been through the whole fundraising and the creating the platform and everything. And then the booking didn't even get declined or accepted. It just timed out after 48 hours. So then we realized, and it dawned on us that, we've raised the money, we've built the platform, we found customers, and we found instructors, but ultimately they weren't behaving how we imagined that they would. We thought they'd be over the moon, but they hadn't updated their availability. And in this case, they hadn't even seen the notification. And when they did see the notification, they weren't available anyway. And so we were like, oh man, we've got this so wrong. We thought it was going to be this simple, and actually it's not. This is a very complex business to grow and build and make work. So that was there, that from that day onwards, it was very much a case of that winter. I think we sold 100,000 euros worth of lessons that winter. And I think myself, Ollie and Aaron probably taught 65,000 of them. So thankfully we're all ski instructors. So it was great, but I mean, we're great. We've made a great business for ourselves anyway. So I think that's sometimes the best thing is that, for us, we were using it day in, day out. I taught the first lesson on Maison Sport. That enabled us to have a really good insight to what an instructor would be thinking and how they'd be using it.
Yeah, funny, this is one thing you probably didn't know about me, but I went to university as a brief and inglorious career, studying computing science. Which again, you did not know this. Not a lot of people do.
I feel like you've had a lot of careers, Nicole.
Yeah, I have. I know. I think I'm on my 8th or 9th. Who knows? But you know what? It's part of life. You can't just. I think that's not a problem. The way I am is if I don't feel that I'm not enjoying it, then it's just a waste of time. If you're going there for the paycheck, if you're just going there to get paid and pay the bills, it's almost like a piece of me is dying every day. A piece of me is dying every day, and you just I like you say, I don't want to get out of bed. I'm in a bad mood. Can't wait for the weekend. And usually the weekend you're just going out, right? you're not really doing much productive. But I digress. However, so I did computing science. I used to do learning how to code. Like I said, badly, but I understood the concept and what you're supposed to do. And you can write the code and you test the code, and the testing of the code is that's the bread and butter. So you end up with a board, like a whiteboard with, it looks like something out of NASA, of everything that could go wrong and what happens with, what's the process in case that goes wrong. And even then you've got to stress test it, like you guys did in your first booking. And of course, something goes wrong. And the 48-hour timeout. Why is that guy not picking up the notification, etc., etc. So I presume you were taking loads of notes at the very start. You're right. You're just scribbling everything down of all the bugs. You've got a list of bugs, probably about 10 pages of A4, and you're trying to work your way through these bugs.
Exactly. Yeah. The bug lists
and
were
then the
endless.
bugs get bugs.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's for like, I think developing a website and building a technology-based business is, if you've not done it before and you've not studied it, it's a steep learning curve. I mean, it's ludicrously expensive. Developers are very expensive. They charge a lot of money. And, ultimately, it's difficult. So they make mistakes and bugs creep up. And we've had some difficult days, put it that way.
I'm just wondering, I guess because you're doing such I'm not going to mention who, but somebody that most people know, built a business by basically ripped off the code from somebody else. Who, like, this website is perfect, that's what we need. And there's ways you can go and have a look at the code, and you basically copy the code and change it around, and you got your own website. I'm not going to say who it was, and I'm not going to say which website it was, but people who have done it all before, you'd kind of think that somehow, somewhere, a company would know, right? Do you want this type of website? Here's the code. Do you want this type of website? Here's the code. And it shouldn't be ludicrously expensive, because it's like buying a suit from a tailor or buying a suit from a shop. Pretty much the same thing, but one's a lot more expensive.
Exactly. I think the challenge is that, for us, a lot of what our magic was that we were creating this new user experience and new journey for customers and instructors. And so, even now there are platforms that you can buy, or marketplaces that you can buy off the shelf, that will do, within reason, similar things to what our platform does. But actually, like, when you really understand your users on both sides, and for us, that's customers and instructors, we had to make something that was very bespoke to make sure that it behaved in exactly the way that we imagined it. So we did. We looked long and hard to see if there was that type of option. But ultimately, it was going to be easier and cheaper.
Back to basics.
Do our own. Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And so you do your first year, you got 100,000 euros worth of bookings.
Yep.
How about your second year?
Second year, we tripled the business, probably. So it went to 300,000. But you have to remember that, this is a platform, so we're taking a commission on it. And at the time, our commission was not even 10%. So we were taking, just under 10% commission from both the customer and instructor. So when I say that we sold 100 grand of bookings, we only made 10 grand, but we'd spent, 150. And kind of that's been a journey. So, over the course of the next, Maison Sport's been going now, around about 8 years. We obviously had a couple of difficult years in there through COVID, where we lost a lot of time and we essentially had to close things down for a period of time. We've had to raise significant amounts of capital. Maybe not in the grand scheme of it, but we've raised just over £5 million. It's gone into the business. That's majority of that's been invested and spent. We've now built the company to a point where it's only just about profitable as we speak.
Yeah, you say it's not a lot of money, but you say it's not a lot of money, but 5 million quid is still 5 million quid, right?
Still 5 million quid.
I know. Yeah, that must have been a bit of stress there, Nick, because that's...
Yeah, but you know what? We've had, like, we've always brought in the right shareholders, and we've been lucky with that, because I wouldn't say that we've necessarily had our pick. We're creating a tech business in a very niche niche, like skiing is a niche sport ultimately. It's niche, and then we're selling a niche part of a niche sport. So it's a difficult sell to a lot of investors of how they're going to get their return and how big the company can grow. But ultimately, the advice is that if you do right by the shareholders and you do what you say you're going to do and you're honest, and that's been a big part of my job, is to make sure that the communication with our investors and our shareholders has always been strong. And I've always been open. Like if we're struggling, I tell them what the problems are, and they help us. We brainstorm and we work through stuff, and then ultimately we set our goals for each round of funding, and we said, if you give us X amount of money, this is where we're going to invest it. And we ended up often achieving what we said we were going to. I think the hardest thing is that we often didn't achieve it within the timeline. So maybe I said, we'll do this in 12 months and it'll take 18. But actually, most people don't mind.
That's not
They're
bad.
kind of like, fine, it will happen. As long as you then deliver it and you work hard. And I think that's what we've always done. So therefore, we haven't taken any institutional money. We've not raised from any VCs. That's, £5 million from mostly individual angel investors, but also several family offices as well. And what everyone has in common is that they're all passionate skiers. So it's great.
Yeah.
All borders, I might add.
All borders.
All borders, yeah, snowboarders. So mixture of skiers and boarders. We pulled in some great people. Like we've got an early investor was Kevin Byrne, the founder of Checker Trade, which was checkertrade.com. You go on to check your sort of local plumber or electrician.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he sold his business to HomeServe for about 100 mil 4 or 5 years ago. We have Gareth Williams, the founder of Skyscanner, came on board a few years back. The connection there is really great. He's always been really supportive to British ski racers from a monetary perspective. And he set up Skyscanner on the back of struggling to find cheap flights to the Alps to visit his brother, who was a ski instructor based in Val d'Isère. Yeah.
Is that right?
My pitch to him was, I feel like this is made for you. You set up a business on the back of the ski industry and your brother being a ski instructor. So here we are with a ski instructor platform. You've been there and done it. Can you help us?
I had no idea. That is a bloody good story. That he was doing that. So you got some tech guys in who have created very successful e-commerce businesses, and as advisors and investors. That's a smart move. That is a very smart move, and it's a great pitch as well. Knowing full well what it's like when you're skint trying to get out to the Alps, trying to get the cheapest flight possible, or wherever you're going to go. It doesn't have to mean in Europe. It's all over the world. But you mentioned when you were in COVID, during COVID, those dark times, and of course in France, everything shut down. At least in Switzerland, the lift stayed open. I mean, it was a crazy thing. We were in a crazy, and looking back now, it's just sheer idiocy that you can all get in a lift together, but you're not allowed to sit down in a restaurant and have a cup of tea or some food. And I remember that. So it was 2020 they shut down, and then in 2021 in Switzerland anyway, they opened the lift so you could go skiing, but the restaurants were closed. And it was February 2021, and I remember it was really, really, really cold winter. And so the ski instructors, because they had nowhere to go for lunch, because normally you go with your clients and you sit in a nice warm restaurant, have a nice lunch, so that's one of the perks of the job for sure. And you got a rest, you got to sit down, your feet warm up, and then you're ready for the afternoon. But you got the clients were off, and what the instructors were doing here, where they were buying sandwiches, going on the lift, and just doing laps in the telecabine, in the gondola, because it was the only way they could get even a remote amount of heat. Some of them were even bringing gas burners, the little gas stoves, just because you turn that on for basically less than a minute, and it is nice and warm. And then it was so cold, and I just used to see these guys and girls up there, and it was it was a bit of a heartbreak looking at them. Do you know what I mean? When you see people, and it is just so cold, and I know what it's like. All you want to do is go inside and warm up, because your hands and your feet are cold. And it was rubbish. So we buggered off to Costa Rica for a couple of months. So this is no point. There's no fun. This
Yeah,
is no fun.
that's what we should have done. I just moved to Edinburgh actually, so we were we were locked out of the house back there. But I mean, yeah, it was pretty devastating for everyone in the industry. I think, particularly in France, like you said, like we lost the whole of that. Next winter was shut down, so we had to close the business down for a period of time where we
So
went
that
to
was
just
20.
that was
It was
2020,
2020,
March
21.
2020 it started, and then it went into
Yeah.
that following season, and then I mean it impacted us all the way through. So like, even the third winter, they threatened to close things down. So I believe we didn't have people going traveling to France from the UK through December 2021. So like it impacted 3 winters basically. So that wasn't
Yeah.
particularly helpful, and actually we burned through probably $1 million in cash through that period of time without
Oof.
bringing in a whole lot of money.
That was
Difficult,
another
and
crazy
when you
time.
worked hard,
Yeah.
when you worked
There's
hard
another, there's
to
another
build the business, and then ultimately you sat there thinking, you're going to lose it all. I guess one of the things that I've kind of taken from it is that it's a little bit of a lesson of you have things on a list of things that could happen. I mean, that wasn't even on the list. Like it wasn't even something, like it wasn't a threat to the business. And ultimately it makes you take a step back, go, okay, what else out there is there that could happen? And to make sure you
it's
have
a black
plan.
swan. It was a black swan. The interesting thing about that as well, when you think back, is remember you couldn't fly into France from the UK. So it took, just for those who don't live in Europe or don't know anything about skiing or the ski industry, that particular time, and it still is a huge aspect of the Alps. And the Alps, it's not a particularly large area, but there's a lot of ski resorts there, and people from certainly around Europe, around the world, will fly into the Austrian Alps, Swiss Alps, Italian Alps, German Alps, whatever, and they come from all over Europe. And that's where if it was only people in Italy going to the Italian Alps or from France going to the French Alps, whatever, that is just not enough people. Then you don't have this now world-class resorts, because the tourists coming in bring in the money, they improve the infrastructure, and it becomes a better and better and better process and better experience. And so you had this ludicrous situation that you could fly into Switzerland from the UK because the lifts were open, but you couldn't go in a restaurant. Oh, woe is me, right? End of the world. But you couldn't fly into France from the UK, but you could drive there. Or you could fly into Geneva, which is in Switzerland, which is right on the border of France, and drive down from there. So it was just the craziest and most idiotic of times. And, not just yourself, but everyone else in France or worldwide who was getting shut down had no income. And the fact that you survived it is very impressive. Anyway,
when everything opened back up, I mean, we had some of our craziest days of bookings. I mean, we didn't have a massive office team because we're coming out of this period of like dark where we're having to keep pops light. And then when everything opened up, it was like 15th or 16th of January. I mean, the office just went mad.
Yeah.
And we did like €250,000 worth of bookings in 12 hours or something the first day.
Wow.
It was just nuts. Yeah, the platform was going crazy, but it was great to see that we'd built a scalable business that, the instructors just had bookings flying in left, right, and center. And it was pretty amazing to see.
It kind of brings me back to you mentioned the passion for skiing. And I had the same thing. I've talked about this before, how my passion was not necessarily just for skiing, it's being in the mountains. It's a beautiful place. It's a great lifestyle. And, it's very healthy. You're outside, fresh air, clean water, great scenery, lots to do, safe, not that many people, no traffic jams, all the things in life which you would like to take for granted. But if you live in a city, forget it, right? So there's the whole aspect for me, and be very honest, it's brought me everything in my life by, and I say this and it sounds a bit trite sometimes, but you've got to follow your passion. It doesn't have to be skiing. And the way you talk about it passionately, and me and everyone else who loves it, for those who don't know about skiing and snowboarding, it is almost like an addiction once you get into it. So not being able to ski for a couple of years and then suddenly it all opens up, of course you're going to get absolutely inundated with bookings, because suddenly it went from being very quiet to packed, and it stayed packed the whole winter. There wasn't really a low season; it was just peak the whole time, from what I could see. So, but where did your passion for it come from?
I mean, my ski journey goes back to like, so my dad was a ski racer when he was younger, just on the dry ski slopes back in the UK. So for anyone that doesn't know what a dry ski slope is, I mean, first of all, probably Google it. It's kind of like you're skiing on plastic bristles, almost like a toothbrush type material. And yeah, these things they're all across the UK. They have them in other parts of the world too. And there's a big one actually
Yeah,
up in Edinburgh.
they're very
In
good at
Scotland.
removing thumbs.
They're very good. Dry slope thumb is a big thing. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I started,
breaking your
my dad
thumb.
kind of, my dad got me down the local dry slope at Aldershot, and it was just an ex-military slope actually where they'd used to train the army over the years. And yeah, went up, learned. He started taking me and my older brother to ski racing sessions, and we progressed just very rapidly. So by the time I was 13, 14, I was the best in the UK on dry ski slopes. And we didn't come from a wealthy background, and kind of, as I alluded to earlier, the cost of getting out to the mountains in Europe and learning to ski on snow, you're competing against kids that are born and
Rich
bred there.
kids
Like, yeah, well, but not also just locals, like
and rich kids.
and rich kids, but locals. And so that wasn't really something that was on my radar. And then I received a scholarship to go away to an academy in Chamonix, ski academy, which was run by Malcolm Erskine, and it was a 2-week trip, and it was free, fully paid for. So it kind of got me out there and to experience it. I progressed and transitioned from the dry slope to the snow really well, and stayed out for an extra week because of that, and I ended up winning the race that I did, and things kind of then just rolled from there. And I was supported through various very kind people, Ingrid Christopherson and Down to Only Club, and yeah, they kind of helped me get to the point that I was then selected for the children's team and then onto the British junior team. And then I think so my passion for the mountains was really obviously formed through those years, and I had an incredibly blessed childhood that I was allowed to and able to go and travel the world. And I raced and trained in Chile and in New Zealand. I raced in Harbin at the World Uni Games in China. Really just raced and skied all over the world. And it was pretty incredible. And this was all, I was 14, 15, 16. There were downsides to that. It meant that going back to school in the UK meant, I would come back and I'd tell stories. And I think most of the kids at the school probably just thought I was full of shit, just making up stuff, because, it was quite unbelievable in a lot of ways. I can reflect that we were in Chile at the end of a long camp down South America in the summer, and we were just left in Santiago at 16 years old and told that our flight was on Sunday morning. We were there for 3 days on our own, just roaming around, grabbing breakfast
Magic.
at the hotel and exploring. So very, very, very cool. A lot of freedom.
That is a lot of fun. I mean, that's a great way to grow up as well, isn't it? You imagine, you talk about the kids who grew up here, who grew up in the mountains, and our house is 3-minute walk to the lift. It's literally walk out my house, 3 minutes later, you're putting on your boots and going up the lift. So my kids, as your kids would have done the same, they grew up. My kids don't remember learning to ski. They don't remember the first time they were started too young. But by the age of 3, 4 years old, they were skiing by themselves and going down pretty much everything.
Yeah.
By 4, certainly. It's such a I don't, it's a privilege. It's like a gift for your kids to be able to do something like this, which is what I always wanted as a kid, and sometimes they don't want to go. I don't want to go to a race club today, Dad. And you go,
Yeah.
get yourself anyway. Yeah,
I mean,
but
like
it's
that
so it's
point, your point there of being a gift is, I think, a really big point. Because like this winter, I flew over, I skied in North America actually for the first time. So we all like traveling. I never skied much in North America. And this winter I had a few days in Vail and a few days in Aspen, where I was skiing with a couple of people I know, and I met a friend Sam over there. And I just one day we were skiing now, and we were like deep in the backcountry, really deep out through the trees. And I just had a moment of just reflecting and just going, this is really cool. This is so much fun. And like, you can't
yeah,
give a better gift to your kids than that. It's like you're just in a big playground, and not many people are capable of doing it ultimately. So like variety of reasons.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of sad, but you should offer up. I'm just throwing ideas at you here, but some like for kids, you get some instructor, like you get the free instructor if you get yourselves out there. He'll teach you how to ski, or get organized groups of kids from inner city kids or something, like a charity.
So we work with a charity called Snow Camp, which is based in the UK, and they basically go in and take inner city kids or kids from underprivileged backgrounds. I see kids like young adults, and they teach them to ski, and then they become ski instructors. So some of them
Is that
just,
right?
go and do some of them will go on and they'll do that sort of Basie level 1 in the indoor snow domes in the UK. And then if you kind of keep going and keep progressing, then they will also help support you and further. So we actually donate 1% of our revenues to Snow Camp every year to try and, I guess, do that, make sure that people from, a variety of backgrounds can actually get out here and experience what we love so much. For me, it's like it's impacted every aspect of my life. Like I think obviously the drive of becoming a sports person and athlete, and trying to compete and feeling like the underdog, like in British ski races, you feel like an underdog because ultimately you don't have the mountains on your doorstep. So and I think coming through that and rising through the ranks and being able to compete with the locals was big. And then, the reason why I got my job as a broker is ultimately probably because of my skiing ability. Yes, I had to be, had good at maths and good at various other aspects, but ultimately it was about, taking clients out and teaching them on slopes and, befriending them in those ways. And I probably wouldn't have ever got my foot in the door without that. So, I met one of the guys I was actually with in Aspen was a guy called Jim Maher, who is a very well-known and prominent business person in the US. And Jim, he kind of said the same thing. Like he was a ski racer when he was younger, and he was working for Credit Suisse at the time, and he was already, I guess fairly high up in their team. But he became CEO of First Boston, which was owned by Credit Suisse. And I said, "Why did you become CEO?" And he said, "Well, the whole executive team left." And he said everyone knew who I was because I used to go to Switzerland and do the annual ski race every year. So the chairman back in Europe knew exactly who I was through my ski racing. And so he appointed me, and, it obviously got on well after my ski racing. So he was like, if it wasn't for skiing, I also wouldn't have progressed through my career. So it's really interesting. It kind of shows that, skiers, we all like each other. We're all friendly. And I think if you sit down in the middle of London and over a beer and meet another skier, you've got something to chat about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a great networking tool, for sure. I'm still friends with clients. In fact, one of them called me yesterday. I hadn't spoken to him for 3-4 years. Certainly 3 years. And he phoned me yesterday, had a quick chat. He needed wanting a help from another contact. He said, this guy? And he's a high-powered, finance guy, one of those guys. And he said, "Oh, I see this guy on LinkedIn. So can you sort something out?" I said, "Yeah, of course." But it's weird how these things happen. So it's a great networking tool for sure. But almost as good as podcasting, because that's a fantastic networking tool as well.
That is
which I've discovered. Yeah, which I've discovered. So you mentioned,
to that point,
we
wouldn't have been able to fundraise without it either. It's the same thing. Like it's a great networking tool. So all of our shareholders are connected in some way, but they all connected to skiing in some way as well. So it's the same thing.
I know. Yeah, I was thinking of, because for me as a kid it was a dream, because I remember when I learned to ski at the place called the Lecht up in the Scottish Highlands, which is basically 4 tow wires that you held onto for dear life. And I was young. I was 6, 7, 8. I can't remember how old I was. And you hold on to this steel rope with these plastic things on it you're supposed to put behind your back, but you never had the strength when you're that age. Anyway, getting dragged up. The wind's coming in horizontally with the rain or the sleet, freezing cold. There's a snow block, the road's blocked to the snow, they have to clear it, so you're out with the car and you're playing in the snow, and of course there was no Gore-Tex back then, and just gloves are soaking, and so you're just freezing, and it's miserable. But, here I am, still doing it. But I remember, like, the ski club in a small town in Scotland where I come from, they'd show videos, the old reel-to-reel, like, something like at the cinema. And it was, guys people skiing these beautiful powder fields in Austria, this blue sky. I thought, it's winter time. How can it be blue sky? Because in Scotland in winter it's generally cloudy and
Okay.
windy, and there's no
Doesn't
wind
happen.
and it's blue sky. And then when I was 10, I moved to California. So we used to go up to Tahoe at weekends to ski. And
Wow,
I
mind blown.
honestly, it is mind blowing. When you feel, if you're somewhere warm and it rains and it's warm rain, and you can, like, if you're from the UK, you think that's no such thing as warm rain. Don't be daft until you experience it. So when you, and if when you talked about the charity there, that's a very interesting one. I might have to speak to those guys. Might have to put me in touch. But bringing
Yeah.
people from, disadvantaged backgrounds who've got less, very little prospects of it. So it's a hard place to get out of if you come from that level. It's tough to get out of. But then if you do get to come and experience something like this, it opens your mind to the possibilities, and it certainly did for me. And I think that drove me on from being a kid, seeing that video. It stuck in my head that I want that. I don't know what it is, but that's
No, I
my mind
remember.
just said
I mean,
that's
mine was
yeah
the
my
my uncle. My uncle would take us often to the sort of the annual Warren Miller ski
yeah
show. They used to do like a cinema tour in the UK. So that would be me. I would
yeah.
go and watch it, and I feel like, oh my God, this is like, it blew my
I have to
mind,
do
to
that.
be honest. Yeah, I have to
Yeah,
go and do
and
that.
then when
Yeah.
you find yourself doing the same runs that you see on those videos, which you
Yeah.
at the time looked, you'd have to be insane to do that. And then that's anyway. It's become sort of to one of your weekend routes, But that's cool. And we talked the other day about you did something else. You set up a foundation, and so why don't you talk about that for a bit, because that sounds very interesting, and explain why it needed to be done.
Okay. So, I mean, it's very new. British skiing is predominantly been funded by UK sport, so British ski racing, sorry. And we have a decent pedigree at the moment of ski racers on the World Cup. Dave Ryden is a multiple World Cup winner, and on the podium, he won Kitzbühel a few years back. And you would imagine that therefore the government in the UK, or there'd be a lot of sport funding for that. But actually there's not. They cut back a lot over the last few years. And so the funding has dried up, and they're relying upon the few commercial sponsors that they do have. And where the US sport over there is not funded essentially by the government. So each sport has to do its own fundraising. And so ultimately they've had a foundation which has raised money for the athletes for, the best part of 50 years. I was very lucky to work with the US Ski Team Foundation for a couple of trips over the last 3 or 4 years, and kind of saw how they were operating and see how they were running it. Felt like Britain should have had something very similar, and through my network and the shareholders at Maison Sport, I felt like there was an opportunity to go in and create an equivalent in the UK. So alongside GB Snow Sport, the governing body, created a foundation which has just launched. So we've just had the first 10 donors are in the process of buying in, and they will give annually to British ski racing. And, I hope to build it into something that's, I guess very similar to the US. And there's some very prominent people in there, like the likes of Gareth Williams and the Skyscanner founder. There's lots of people that want to get involved. Prince Edward is a patron of GB Snow Sport, and he's very supportive. So it's going to be great. It's going to be really, really good. And it's an absolute game changer for the athletes. And obviously this is something that's very close to my heart, ultimately. I would have loved to have continue to pursue a career in ski racing, and whether I've been able to or not, you will never know. But actually, I wasn't really given the opportunity in the end because the funding was cut at such a critical time for me, at the age I was. So I don't want that to happen to anyone else, if possible. I think this is a way of creating a sustainable model for ski racing in the UK. Yes, the UK sport funding will come and go. But the way they fund things in the UK is based on medal potential. And ski racing is difficult ultimately. Like, you can be disqualified for a straddle or for missing a gate. You might have 60 or 70 athletes that are highly competitive in the Olympic Games. So to be in the top 3 or top 5, which is what's required to get funding for the next 4 years, is incredibly difficult. So Dave, as an example, last year was one of the top ranked skiers in the world, but he didn't perform as well as he could have in the World Championships. And therefore, the funding wasn't there. Whereas there's other sports out there, sports that we love, like curling, obsessed with curling every time the Winter Olympics comes around. But, if you go in as one of the top ranked curling sides, then it's far easier to, I guess, place. And therefore, UK sport like to back those sports rather than the riskier sports ultimately. So,
yeah, I would like
it
to back
works.
the underdogs.
So, I know, exactly. But hopefully we can turn it around and, we can get more money flowing through.
Yeah, it's worth. I think it's worth mentioning that. So we're talking about Dave Riding, British slalom skier in the World Cup, multiple podium. He's excellent. Again, like you, I think he learned his trade on the dry slopes on the toothbrush. But I heard
that Pendle.
And also it's really important to stress that to do what he's done, or Alan Baxter did the same thing. If any British athlete gets a podium, how hard that is to do, because you're up against these alpine savages who've been doing this since before they could walk, and it is extremely, extremely hard to do. So that person, so Dave Riding and and Alan Baxter, who got a podium, who won a bronze medal in the Olympics. Most people don't know about that, and you think that person should be a national hero, right? Because that is extremely difficult to do. Now, I heard a story from someone who knows him, because I've never met Dave Riding, but who said that he's pretty much living out of a van when he's moving around, because it's with the cost of hotels, etc. When he's doing all these things, it's very prohibitive.
Yeah, I mean,
is that true, or is that
like? I think
maybe not now.
Maybe not now exactly. I think at times, and I think, ultimately the funding has been very thin on the ground for the last so many years. So there would have been times where, that may have happened. I'd probably put a shout out to the coaches who are probably sleeping in the vans more than Dave is ultimately, to try and save costs and save funds. But Nickel, you probably know, well, most people that know me, I'm obsessed with sport. I love playing sport. I love watching sport. I watch every sport, from snooker to darts to football to rugby, whatever it might be. Exactly. And honestly, from a British sporting perspective, over the last 20 years, there is not a bigger underdog story out there. Like, you look at Leicester City winning the Premier League title. What was that? Must be 10 years ago now. Dave Riding winning the Kitzbühel slalom in Austria in front of 50,000 people. I mean, that just doesn't happen. Like, that is just, it's insane. It's unbelievable.
It is insane. And it is such an achievement for that guy. Hey, if you know him, let me know. I wouldn't mind get him on.
We couldn't get him on.
Get him on as a friend.
He's a friend, and we'll pull him on. Yeah, he should come on. And
give him a shout.
I think ultimately he, whilst in the UK, he's not, a celeb. I mean, the guy probably can't go for dinner in Austria without, everyone in the restaurant coming and patting him on the shoulder and saying, well done. And he's well liked. He's a very likable person. He's down to earth. Great.
Do you know, it's funny. There's a guy I know who comes to Verbier, a guy called Dario Franchitti. Have you heard of him?
Yes.
Yeah. Most people haven't in the UK, but so he's an IndyCar racer. He's a racing car driver, but he won the IndyCar, the Indy 500 3 times.
A great example of someone that has achieved incredible things that has very little recognition.
He's such a nice guy, so humble. He can walk down the street in Europe. Most people don't know, unless you're a complete petrol head, right? Somebody who really understands, who really follows racing. He goes to the States. He's like royalty across there. And he's such a nice fella, and he's completely normal. Anyway, he's.
I think it's probably the way most people would want it. It's quite good that you can live at
Absolutely.
home and just live a normal life, but actually when he's away racing, it's a different world. So he can kind of dip his toe in and out of that celeb world.
I need an ego boost. I'll go to the States. I'll go to the because I think he has to go to the. I think you have to. If you're still alive and you're a former Indy 500 winner, I think you're duty bound to go to the Indy 500 every year, and you are. Okay. He was telling me about it. He said at least that's
insane. What you tell people. I was going to say, where did you live? It would show a lot about your personality. Where did you decide to live, in the UK where no one knows you, or in the US where everyone knows you?
He lives in the UK.
Okay, that's good.
He lives in the UK. So I was just, that gave me an idea. So you talk about your foundation. GB Snow Sports Foundation. Is that what you call it? GB Great Britain
Yeah,
Snow Sports
GB,
Foundation.
yeah, exactly.
How about I organize a fundraiser in Verbier. Invite
Like,
some of the
I mean,
some
I'm
of the
going to hold you
some
to
of the
this.
yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun. A lot of people with deep pockets, and organize a dinner or something. Maybe not a dinner, maybe a lunch. Take a whole restaurant or something and just get everyone up there and
And
get them drunk and get them
we'll get
writing
the races
checks.
along. So we'll get the
Yeah,
slalom team along. So Dave, Billy, and Laurie, all ranked in the top 30 in the world at the moment. They can all come.
yeah. I'll get see if I can get some famous race car drivers who are not so famous. Come on. But, you know, there's people. There's people we know. People who are pretty famous. People who are very famous in some cases. Who absolutely love skiing. So you know, it's not a bad option. I don't think they know about it. So I'd love to, Nick. There's mine. I'd love to organize that. That'd be a lot of fun if we can organize that. I have to try and figure.
Yep.
I have to give this some thought. Before I let you go, bud, because that's an hour. We've done an hour already. I didn't really when you talked about. So you were learning how to ski on dry slopes. So on these toothbrushes. Now.
Yep.
Then you said, but you'd skied on snow. Had you gone on like family holidays and done a bit of skiing, or not really?
Not much. I didn't ski on snow until I was 9 years old.
Right.
So
it
was like,
and when you
yeah, it was a big delay before I went away.
okay, and then so when you went to Chamonix on this camp that you got the scholarship for, how old were you when you did that?
I had just turned 12.
Wow. Okay, so
I did this crazy progression where I went from first skiing a slalom gate on snow at probably 12 to being ranked in the top 10 in the world for my age by the time I was 17.
That's impressive, and that's seriously impressive, and you won that race in Chamonix. You stayed on for another week, and you beat I thought it was just a bunch of British kids, but you're actually with
That was
all
mostly
the French
British
kids.
then. So that was mostly British kids then. It was then over the course of the next few years. So, you know, we did some of the more local French races, and then the big kind of kids race of the year is in Topolino. It's called Topolino. It's in the unofficial Kids World Championship. So the kids come from, you know, all over the world to compete. So I raced at Topolino when I was, I think, maybe 15. And then, you know, once you turn 16, you become professional and you end up with a world ranking. And then, you compete internationally around the world, different events.
Yeah.
So, you know, your big thing with that is that you're tracking yourself. So, I was born 1991, and you are looking at all the other 91s or 90s to see how you're kind of progressing against the best in the world. And it's cool, you know, like ultimately up there, and the French junior champs. I was 17. I was following Alexis Pantera out the gate because the rankings were very similar. But some of these guys then obviously just keep going and keep progressing and reach that point. But yeah, you're in and around that world. It's very, very cool, very fun.
Well, Nick, it was great to see you a couple of days in person. You know, I funnily said, come on around to the house, we'll do one now. Maybe we should have, but we didn't have time. We both had things to do, but that would have been fun. But this is the next best thing. And I'm really, really happy. I'm super pleased for you that you're doing so well with this, with Maison Sport. And it's, you know, good on you. You're
Thank you.
Impressive.
It's good.
Young
like
man.
I said, I'm enjoying it though, so it's not.
Exactly.
It's a lot of fun, and I hope that we can continue to grow it and give everyone as great a time on the slopes as possible.
Yeah, and now that we're back in touch, let's stay in touch and let's talk about. I've got a couple of things I want to run past you anyway. Nothing onerous. Don't worry. I'm not going to ask you for money. I'm not behind in the rent. But I think organizing a fundraiser would be a lot of fun. And also I've got a couple of things I'd like to talk about. But Great British Snow Sports Foundation, Maison Sport, what's your website and what's your Instagram handle or what's your socials?
So you can find, Maison Sport, it's maisonsport.com. That's the platform, and also supremeski.com, as this is the more traditional ski school. And there is actually one business now, it's one company. So you can book lessons for both businesses on either website. And what else was that? Instagram handle, I think it's just Maison Sport, I believe.
Yeah, I think
We've
it
got
is.
a lot of great content on there. yeah, like the Instagram channel's gone crazy this last year. There's a lot of
Yeah.
videos on, yeah, like how-to videos. I mean, I think there's 140,000 followers now.
Yeah.
It's popular and it's
147.
really great. Yeah, I mean, you'll find some really awesome pole plant content in there, which was from me last winter. Please don't actually look for it. I did 3 videos and out. I got kicked out. Ellie, our head of content, was like, right, thanks, Nick. That's the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. Do you know a guy called Tom Waddington? Another
Yes.
instructor guy. So this guy, he
Just
just
followed his
wrote,
journey. Just followed the
yeah,
journey. Yeah.
yeah, future podcast guest. I expect he did say he'd do it when he come back. Tom just rode the wrong way across the Atlantic solo, so from Canada to England. Insane what he did, but he's got a very strong following on Instagram as well, and he does tutorials, and it's really fun reading the comments underneath. It's
Yeah.
where are your poles, brah? You know, because he's doing drills with that poles. You know, and anyway.
We have in our weekly marketing meeting, we have comment of the week, or we have troll of the week. That's what we call that. So Ellie she goes onto YouTube and Instagram and finds troll of the week, and we have a good chuckle.
Perfect. Oh, that is fun. You
You
should
have
post
to.
them.
You have to turn
You
it.
should post them. But tell you what, you got to make sure you publicize this on your nearly 150,000 followers. That'll do me a world of good. Anyway,
Yeah.
Nick Robinson, great to speak to you, pal. That was a lot of fun, and I'll see you soon. Let's talk soon.
Cheers, Nicole.